board. I am filling in for Cindy Thomas. I'm happy to welcome you to today's session. I believe it's the 5th out of 6 sessions. So you're well on your way to completing this course. Today's session is on declarations, requests, offers, and promises, which, of course, as every session will be recorded and available on this community's Noddlepod for viewing later. You should be familiar at this point with Jennifer Hughes and Susan Steins from SEEK, and I will turn it over to them to get us started.
Awesome, Megan. Thank you for being here in Cindy's absence today. We love having our NAC representation on and helping us out. As Megan mentioned, this is recorded. So just a heads up that we are recording this. We record all of these so that we can make them available should folks want to view these later. As Megan also mentioned, this is our fifth out of 6. So we are nearing the home stretch, and our focus today is on declarations, requests, offers, and promises. We're going to really look at the creative impact of declarations, requests, offers, and promises, and we'll use all 3, how we use all of these to produce desired results. We are going to have some breakout rooms. As we've done in the past, we'll make these small groups so that if there are folks who don't have as much of a flexibility to participate, they can kind of opt out of those. But hopefully we'll have enough people in them that they'll be productive and useful for everyone. So as a reminder, this is how our program looks. We are doing 6 faculty-led sessions. These happen every other month. So we are in our 5th one. And then we have, I think we have some folks. Just want to make sure everybody mutes for now. Just make sure we don't talk over each other. We will definitely open this up for opportunities to contribute. We don't want Jennifer to be the talking head throughout the whole time. In addition, we have Noddlepod as your online learning community, and this is where we do some after-session engagement. So in those other months, Susan has worked to create some questions, things to get us thinking. There's other resources that are sometimes provided in those Noddlepod, in that Noddlepod community. So we really strongly encourage you to go check that out, to become an active participant. It's never too late to jump in and get engaged there. And our overall learning objectives, this is for the entire program, really just supporting you in your personal and professional growth. I think all of this program can be helpful in both your professional areas of your life and the personal areas. They can help you design breakthrough results. We want you to look at 3 broad areas. This is in your individual well-being, personal and professional relationships. And if you're leading, which we believe everyone is a leader in their own right, whether you're leading just yourself, leading a project, leading a team, leading other leaders, or leading a large organization, you are a leader. So we want to increase that effectiveness. And then we really just want to help you create a balance of peacefulness and productivity, and whatever that means for you. We are unique human beings, which means it's different for each one of us. Learning objectives for today. We're really honing in. This is actually one of my favorite sessions because we're really giving you some tangible things that you can take and do with declarations, requests, offers, and promises. And we've talked a lot about the power of language. We really see it in these. So we want to hone in on them, give you some tools and techniques, get you practicing, and become more competent in these areas. Specifically, I hear a lot of the feedback on how we forget how horrible we've gotten at making requests. And so I'm super excited to talk about the elements of effective requests today, and really start to analyze how our requests are going. And then lastly, really just continuing to build and strengthen our relationships. And we do that with and through language. And so the power of language, the better we can become competent in all these different areas, the more powerful our relationships will be and effective. Our ground rules. This is, again, same thing we've seen the past 4 sessions. We want to turn off as many distractions as we can. I understand it's real life. Parents are here. Caretakers are here. We understand life comes up, but as much as we can, let's turn those distractions off for the next 90 minutes and be in this room together. Confidentiality is key. I'm a big don't tell other people's stories. So you may hear stories today, just really being aware that stories remain with the individual who is telling them. Let's keep a safe space here today. Let's be supportive of each other, and let's keep everything that's said in the room in the room. We want you to be present. A lot of these prior, like keeping off those distractions, helps you to be present, but really be present in the space today. If you hear things that make you go, oh, I know this, I would like to suggest that that should be a opening for you to say, well, what new thing could I learn? If I think I know everything, what might I be missing? And so I'm just going to encourage you to look at it that way. Be a beginner. Remember to take this in for yourself. Once you feel competent in these areas, that's when you can think about who else you might want to bring into the space. So focus on yourself. And then I don't have to say this to those here, be on time. We are so appreciative of you showing up, being here with us, and moving forward through this. Okay. So we talked about in our last session, assertions and assessments, super powerful in regards to language and what happens when we make those assessments, and how we want to be right in them. And so we continue looking for the things that will make us right. Well, today we're focusing on the other 4 speech acts: declarations, requests, offers, and promises. And again, if we want to make change, if we want to be more productive, if we want to be more effective, we need to increase our competency in all of these 6 speech acts. There are results. Some of them can be good and some of them not so good when it comes to how we use language. And these are just going to make you more powerful in understanding how you're using language, how you can be more effective in that. So learning is required. So we're going to move into declarations. And we're going to start by putting you in some rooms together and talking about some things. So we're going to get you into small groups. We want you to take a look at this quote. We did not pick the most famous quote of the Declaration of Independence, but we did pick one here. The quote is, "And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." And we want you to go into your space together and talk about these 6 things. When you look at this declaration, what gets opened? When you look at this, what gets closed? What might be created from this declaration? Or what might be shifted, changed, or established? What is this declaration doing? So what is it actually trying to perform? And what is different after hearing this declaration or after it's been made? So we just want you discussing those 6 things as it relates to this specific declaration in your breakout rooms. We're not going to have you in there forever. Don't worry. We're going to keep this a short conversation. I do want to make sure Susan might be ready for us to go off and have this discussion. Looks like we have everyone back with us. So we were not here to debate, right? We're not looking at debating the particular declaration that we put in front of us, or even get into conversations around the state of our country, just really focusing on these 6 questions based on this declaration. So what did you guys come up with in regards to the 6 questions? What gets opened or closed or created, or how did this shift, change, or establish things? What is this declaration doing? And feel free to either unmute or share via chat. We have opening an alliance, right? Creating some sort of alliance there between folks. What else?
Jennifer, I think we chatted, I was with Christine and we chatted about like relationship and this idea that you're um like committed. We find
Mhm.
a little bit of commitment in this statement. And so I think it just kind of welcomes the beginning of something.
Yeah, the start of something new, right? Yeah. Again, I'm seeing some great stuff, opening some sort of rapport between individuals or groups, right? That maybe didn't exist prior to that. Being intentional with creating new experiences. Pledging for a common outcome. What about what's different? And I think some of these can be wrapped up in that, but what's different after this declaration is made? What do you think is different? I think, Tom, your word of commitment is a good one that comes up, right?
That's what we talked about, is that trust. This is like an early um place to build trust. Like, okay, we know you're committed, we know this is serious. This was the other thing we talked about, our sacred honor. You don't
Yeah.
say those words very often, but this was important. This uh, I said, like, they weren't talking about the weather, they were talking about important things, and they were putting it on the line. And I really, I'm really impressed by this comment, because of course it's taken, like, a little bit out of context. Like, we don't know what this is all about. We know the
Sure.
general, but it is really cool. If I was sitting in that meeting, I would say, okay, game on. Like,
Hmm.
I'm here, I'm ready, they're ready, we made this commitment, let's begin.
Yeah, I had this sense of, especially the words, we mutually pledge to each other, like this really strong relationship that has been formed and created with one another, that we're all together, right? This sense of togetherness. Yeah, great stuff. These are words. It's language. You see how powerful language is, right? That's what we want to show with declarations, right? Language is so powerful. It's not just creative, it generates a new way of being, and in this sense, being together in this, right? Great. So we've gone this large view. I want you to think about a couple of things. So as I go through, I'm going to read some declarations. I may not get to all of them. But I want you to think about, again, what gets opened or what might get closed, or is there something new that gets created or shifted or changed or established? What is it that declaration does? Is there an action to it? And is something different after the declaration is made? So you don't have to answer every single one of these, right? But just getting you thinking in that context of what do each of these key declarations do. So the first one, someone says, I don't know. What happens? Feel free to use chat. Feel free to come off mute. We're small enough that we can come off mute. We talked about I don't know in our very first module. We remember this? We talked about the module of learning to learn, right? It produces something, right? It produces this context, if you will, for learning.
Yeah, it to me, it does open the door. When you say you don't know, I might not know either, but maybe together we can find it out. Like that third possible solution. It's not my way, it's not your way, but it's the new or another way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm encouraged by it. It's not as when somebody says this is the way we're doing it, I feel like, okay, so you didn't even listen to me. You don't care what I think. But when somebody says I don't know, it almost is an invitation for me to be able to say something in response. Well, I don't know either, but what do you think about this? Or
Mm-hmm.
something along that line.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, we're seeing a couple things come through. Dialogue, conversation gets open. Yeah, it's like it creates a new space, right? And sometimes all it takes if you're in a group setting is for one person to say it that totally, I mean, you can feel, and I'm curious if anyone has felt this when you're in space together with a group and the one person is the brave enough soul to say, I don't know what we do next. Have you actually felt the shift that can take place in that room together or in that space together? I mean, it's almost palpable that you can feel a change of where you were right before it to where you were right after it. And Tom, I think you said this great. I think Pamela, you're saying this, it shifts it to an opening. We can now explore together, right? Great. What about, I apologize? What happens here? Maybe you don't hear it that way. Somebody says, I'm sorry. First of all, we probably don't hear it enough. We forgot how to do that past the 4th grade. What happens? What gets opened or created or what gets closed? Is it an opening? Something shift? Ah, I love it. Emily was going where I was going to go next. It depends on what follows, right? Is it a real apology or is it I apologize, but, and now I have this excuse, so it's really not an apology, right? That's great. So it does depend. Let's say it's a true apology. Oh, here we have some diffuses the situation, allows us to shift the conversation. You know, for me, when I have received a sincere, I'm using the word sincere intentionally, a sincere apology, I feel a lightness to the person, meaning I'm not as hard as maybe I was. So it creates an opening for me. If it follows by the but, that changes, Emily. Okay. What about thank you? Again, genuine, sincere, thank you. Ooh, feel seen. Yeah.
A genuine thank you to me is, they're free. I don't know why people don't say it more often, but it's appreciated. I feel valued
Mhm.
when somebody uses those words.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I love some of the shows the genuine appreciation. To know you're appreciated makes you feel more willing to help in the future. Yes, I totally agree, Megan. Get some specificity around that. Thank you for, right? Fill in the blank, rather than just a general thank you. What about I forgive you? Ooh, right? Man, some of these I can feel a shift in me when I just read or say the words out loud. Right? We're going to skip through a couple, but think about these for yourself, right? I love you. Yes. Yes is a declaration. No. No is a declaration. Good. Right? Bad. The blank is not working or is a big problem or represents a new opportunity, right? So again, just think about these individually and what they produce for you. We've gone from that big looking at our country, right, to the small individual declarations that truly do shift and change what is happening for us. Declarations are powerful. We're going to talk a little bit more about declarations. So again, they are extremely creative and powerful, right? I love this bringing in assertions. With assertions, first comes the world, then comes the word. With declarations, first comes the word, then comes the world, meaning we create something new out of that when we declare it. I often kind of joke about, declaring when you go on a diet or don't go on a diet and how good you are right after that. It's when that declaration gets weak that you tend to fall off the wagon, for anyone who has ever struggled in that area. But you speak it first, right? Whether you're speaking it just to yourself or speaking it out loud to others for accountability, you speak it first and then your actions follow. I love that declarations are like a rudder of the boat. They set the direction. And this is both for individuals and for organizations. So when we think about setting goals and objectives, visions, things like that, we are setting the direction. It also creates a different space for us. Sorry, I'm going to do a quick mute on that. I was getting a little feedback there. Creates a context, different context for us, different space, talks about the possibilities that should be considered. One of the things we need to think about with our declarations is, especially professionally, is declaring our standards for success, right? So oftentimes, if you either give feedback to others and or you are getting feedback, maybe you hear something like, oh, that didn't quite hit the mark, right? Well, did anyone ever give me any standards of what the mark was? And oftentimes we don't know the mark until we know it was missed or it was knocked out of the park. That is messages for us to start declaring those new standards. The problem is we don't declare them out loud. We often keep them to ourselves. So this is me encouraging you to make sure you're being clear about the standards that you have, because those are your declarations, right? This is what I think collaboration looks like. That's how I declare it in my group. It could be different for others. So just thinking about those things. Other things about declarations, they will strongly influence how we interpret future actions and words and events. So very similar to our assessments. Reminder here that every declaration is a decision, meaning a yes or a no. Every single one of them is a declaration. Those standards are declarations. With them, we do 4 things. We either open something, we close something, we are evaluating, or we are making a decision. And those are the 4 things that we do with declarations. A key point on this is that you need to have the authority to make the declarations you're out there making, right? So I could go around and make declarations all day long about things in our organization, but do I have the authority to make them? If I do not, they can be invalid declarations. If I do, they may be valid. Now, with valid and invalid comes more than just authority, right? Because I can make declarations that just don't work for anyone, which would make it invalid. But the key here is it's based on levels of authority. So we really need to consider that when we're at work, especially professionally, is what do we have the authority to make? And I just want you to think about that for a minute. Think of 2 declarations that you have the authority to make it work. What might those be? And then think of 2 declarations that you don't have the authority to make it work. Right? Going to keep us moving. There's also, we talked about social commitments that are involved with assertions and assessments, but we also have a social commitment with the declarations that we make. One is that we have the authority to make that declaration. And 2 is that we're going to act consistently with it. It's like I'm going to go around declaring that I have an open door policy as a leader, but every time you go by my office, the door's actually closed. I'm not acting consistent. And maybe I'm thinking of that as a, it's just in theory, like the door is open. I don't mean physically, but you have to think about what your actions are doing and whether or not you're acting consistently with the declarations you're making. If you are making personal and professional goals, those are declarations. A declaration is something where we say we are one thing today, but we want to be something different. We make that declaration so that we can move to that future self, who we say we want to be. Right? These create a horizon of possibilities for us. They also impact our moods, but our moods also impact our declarations. Okay. Bottom line, declarations are generative. We generate something new, and that could be a closing, but could be an opening, a closing. They are powerful. We are just not being creative with them. We are creating a new way of being with them, and that is powerful. Any thoughts or questions on declarations? All right. We're moving into requests, offers, and promises. The first thing I want you to do, I want you to think about a time that you made a promise or a commitment and you did not keep it. Has anyone ever done that? Does it feel different to use the word promise versus commitment? Because, by the way, they mean the same thing. Right? They mean the same thing. Now I want you to think about someone else who made a promise or a commitment to you and did not keep it. Okay? Someone who made a promise to you or a commitment or an agreement and did not keep it. As you think about those, I'm going to tell you a quick story, but I want you to think about what happens to the trust, relationship, the success, self-esteem, as you either didn't keep that promise to someone else or they didn't keep it to you. So let's say I tell my team I'm going to provide feedback to them on this project we're working on, and I'm going to do that by Wednesday. Okay. Wednesday afternoon, I get derailed by another project. Never happens to anybody, right? I get derailed and I quickly send an email to my team. Something came up and I'll have feedback for them by Thursday at noon. Okay. Meanwhile, my colleague, Sally, who's running this project, needs to have her final version to our manager by noon on Friday. She knows that I have expertise in this one section. She doesn't want to move forward without me. So she just highlights the sections that are most important for me to review and sends me an email to ask if I can focus only on those things, right? By that Thursday noon timeframe. Thursday at 2:30, I receive an email from Sally that my feedback's important, but she may have to submit it without my feedback. So I'm rushing to get it to her, but I get sidetracked when my friend John comes in and asks me to help him on something else. I forget to provide my feedback to Sally. She submits her final version to her manager on Friday at noon. I feel like I've never followed through on projects. especially the ones that I'm on the periphery of them. And now I have this fear she's not going to help me out on this project that I have coming up in a few weeks. Any of this sound familiar? Okay. What happens with trust in that story? So if I'm breaking all these promises, what's happening with the trust?
It's also being jeopardized. And
Trust.
um,
Yeah.
it's I teach a class on building professional relationships, and it's called building bridges. You're either building or burning bridges.
Yeah.
And that's what came to mind when you were saying that. Like, that's not good. That's not healthy. Um, and it's hard to build trust. It's easy to lose it. And just,
It's hard to build it, but it can be done.
yes.
It's hard.
And it's worth it.
It's
When
worth
it's
it.
all said and
Yeah.
done, it's a heavy lift, but when you are, let's say you're on a trusting team, it's a pretty incredible team if everyone is trusting one another.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm seeing others are saying trust is eroded, it suffers, it's diminished, maybe even lost. And I would say the same thing is happening with the relationship, with the potential success. And I mean, you can kind of hear it in my story, right? I'm even saying at the end, I am fearful that I never follow through on these projects where I'm like a periphery kind of person. So my self-esteem is also impacted. And so at the end of the day, when we don't keep our promises, when we don't keep our commitments, we are breaking all of these things. Now, if I change my story slightly, right? I tell my team I'm going to provide my feedback to them on the project and presentation by Wednesday. Another project manager comes in, has an urgent request, but I tell that project manager I can help them after I've completed this particular task, right? And I give her a specific time that I will come to her and help. I'm able to send that feedback by the time I leave. I follow up with that new project manager saying, I can now help you with your project. I feel good about following through on these commitments or promises that I've made, even if I had to tell that project manager I couldn't help until the next day. And that project manager was appreciative, even though I couldn't help her out immediately. So what's happening with trust, relationship, success, and self-esteem? It's going up. And how did I do that? I didn't meet everybody exactly where they wanted me to meet them, right? But I was able to communicate, and I would say language here, right? Language enabled me to set those expectations, to negotiate a new commitment day, right? To follow through on what I said I was going to have done, which increases my trust, even with the person who didn't get what they wanted when they wanted it. My relationships, my success, the success of the team, and my self-esteem, right? Pamela's hitting it. Communication is key. Being honest, not just honest with others, honest with ourselves. Are you a people pleaser? If you are a people pleaser, I have a sneaking suspicion you have experienced this. Right? When you want to say yes to everything, you need to remember that that's a declaration. Right? And if you are saying yes to everything, guess what? You're saying no to something. You are potentially breaking a commitment or a promise or an agreement that you've made elsewhere. So we're going to get you into a room. And we want you, again, we're going to do a larger, probably 6 people in each room. We want you to first think of a request you need to make to someone in the next week. It doesn't matter the context. We would like to keep it as professional as we can. So a professional request you need to make of someone in the next week. In this small group, we only need 2 of you to actually be brave enough to make your requests. The first person will make their request. Once they're done with that, another person will make their request. We're only going to have you in the rooms for a short period of time. If there's time for everyone to do their requests, feel free to do that. But if there's not, we just need 1 or 2 of you to be able to do it. Okay, so no other context, just a request you're going to need to make within the next week. Okay, I think everyone should be back with us now. So you went off and you made your request, and I feel like this is a bit of trickery because now I'm going to walk you through the elements of effective request. We want to then go back and dig into the request you made to see how we might make it more effective. So there are 6 elements of an effective request. And if you are just lobbing requests over the cubicle walls or as you're walking by in a hallway, you are not adhering to the first and second rules of an effective request. The first one being, if you're making the request, you need to be a committed speaker. And a committed speaker does not just throw out something that is important and is needed as you're heading out the door. That's not what a committed speaker does. A committed speaker is going to do whatever it takes to have a committed, this is the next one, listener in front of them. And a committed listener is someone who may or may not be taking notes, but you can definitely tell from their body language, from how they're responding to you, that they are paying attention to what you are saying. They're not texting, they're not emailing, they're not eating pizza, looking at their computer. They're not doing those things. They are committed to listening to what it is you are asking. Okay, so those are the first 2 elements of an effective request. The third one is the one that was really changed how I made requests. This is future action and conditions of satisfaction. Future action and conditions of satisfaction. This is the detail, the specification in our requests that when we don't provide it, we get upset that the person we made the request of did not provide us for exactly what we were looking for, right? So if you are actually making requests and you are getting the results that you want, making ambiguous or vague requests, then keep on making vague requests. I'm not here to tell you to do it any different. But if you feel like you're not getting the results that you want, or that you have to repeat your requests over and over, then you may want to pay attention to future actions and conditions of satisfaction. Examples. I asked Susan to send me a status report, but I don't tell her anything that should be included in it. Okay, that's vague. But if I send her a status report and I give her, I need to have all of the monthly deliverables that were provided along with the dates that you delivered them to the client. I need to know what is expected in the next reporting period, including any new deliverables that you anticipate giving. Wow, that's a lot more clarity that Susan is likely to be more successful in creating this report for me. I have asked my kids to go clean their room, and I have been so upset to walk in 2 hours later and it not be what I want it to be. Could it possibly be that my vision of what cleaning your room looks different than theirs? Sure. But if I go in and tell them, I want you to clean your room by this time, right? And this is what I want you to do. I want you to make the bed, which means to pull the sheet up first and then pull the comforter over that with both of the pillows at the top of the bed. I then want you to fold your blanket and put that at the bottom of the bed. I want you to pick up every single toy that is currently on the floor and put it into the toy bin. That gives them a lot more clarity on what my vision of a clean room looks like. Those things are future actions and conditions of satisfaction, right? But if you truly don't care what you get back, then don't pay attention to this part. All right, the next one, time frame. This is one of those things that we all know, and yet we don't do. And we say things like, at your earliest convenience, as soon as possible. These are not time frames. This doesn't give an indication to the individual that you're making the request of when you actually need it, right? So think about time frame. Next one, mood. Do you think if someone's in a really frustrated state of mind, that it's a good time to make a request of them to do more work? Does mood matter? It absolutely matters. We're talking about emotional space. This is both for the speaker and the listener. Our moods impact how we interpret information and how we take in these requests. How we say things is more often, it's more important than what we say, right? So mood absolutely needs to be considered when you're making your request. And last, but certainly not least, is context, right? We need to make sure we are providing enough context that it makes sense for the individual completing the request of why we're even asking them to do this. If I just ask Susan to put together a status report and I provide no other context of what the importance of that is, Susan, we need to create a monthly status report because that's within our contract. And if we don't do that, then we are potentially going to lose the contract. That's a heck of a lot more context for Susan on the importance of this status report happening every single month, right? This is where are you coming from, right? Why do we need to do this? What is it important for, right? So now I want you to reflect on that request that you just made. And we're going to send you back in the same rooms. And would you do anything different if you had a do-over? And we just want you sharing your reflections on this. All right, I think everyone should be back in the large room with us. So I'm curious about the do-over, and I'll actually go back here. Was there something about the 6 elements that really stood out that you, if you had a do-over, you would focus on one of these? Anyone willing to share?
Sorry, my camera's not working. I'm moving offices, so I'm just in a little cubicle. We talked about our mood and time and the time frame when we make these requests. So Shannon brought a good point, like when we think about the requests we need to make to our team and maybe not asking them to, or maybe not requesting this task or project or whatever it is on a Friday, or just kind of be more mindful of things like that, definitely, versus for some of us, we're kind of like on the go and not realizing, you know, everything else, obviously. So good reminders for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing. Anyone else? Any specific element that you, yeah, I should probably include that more or be more cognizant of it? Again, you can use chat or come off mute.
Jennifer, I wasn't real clear on my time frame, so I made a request. It was information, can you give me an update? And I didn't say like by end of day. I didn't have a time frame, so that was my miss.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Tom. Yeah, thank you, Tanya, too. I'm seeing your chat explaining that why helps to get buy-in. Absolutely. And Susan, I love the addition of adding impact, maybe in that context piece could be really helpful. Great addition. I think so many times And I would say that maybe it's a personal problem. The older I get, the more I have this feeling of, well, people should just know that, right? And I would say clarity, clarity, clarity will never be something that people don't want. If you get to a point where you've worked with someone long enough that they just know what you mean, then you've created those distinctions. But that's based over time. You can't let those distinctions that you've created with that individual cloud the either lack of distinctions you've made with others, right? Or different distinctions you've made with others. For me, that future action and conditions of satisfaction really changed how I started making requests, because I was doing that assumption that, well, people just know that that's what you do, right? No, people don't know. They don't know. And we shouldn't get upset with them when they don't deliver what it is we want, if we weren't clear about it. So that one was definitely one that I missed a lot. I love this too, giving enough time for the request to be fulfilled. That's a great thing to bring up, because, and Tom, as you were just talking about time frame, sometimes I don't need something urgently, and I actually get ahead of it, which is not always all the time for me, but I get ahead of it. And I love this. How long will it take you? Or can you give me a due date for when you can complete that? And I love giving that option when that option's actually works for all of us. So I think that's great. So we got to reflect on our effective requests and how to make them more effective. And I want to bring up something interesting to think about as we make offers. So think about the last offer you made to someone. I can be pretty transparent that mine was something like, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Sound familiar? Probably. I want you to think about offers just like you would effective requests. Imagine using the elements of an effective request as also the elements of an effective offer. If I want to say, rather than say, let me know if you need help, if I know that Susan needs help developing a specific workshop because maybe she's not done it before, I might make an offer to sit down with her for 1 hour to share with her some materials that I have used in prior workshops. Take it or leave it. You don't have to use any of it, but I'd like to make that offer, and we could sit down this Friday to go over those materials to see if it would support her in developing this new workshop. Is that a better offer than, Susan, let me know if you need help? I love it. Yeah. I use, what do you want me to do? Yeah, great way to get it out. I also say this is extremely powerful, not just in our professional lives, but in our personal lives. Imagine having a friend or a family member, a neighbor who you know needs support, and you have a clear offer you could make them to give them that support. I say go do it. Give them a clear offer, something specific, using these 6 elements. So we want you to think about that. Think about a time that you offered your help on something that you were interested in participating in, and just write down what you said. Again, I can honestly say, even for projects, I have just said things like, hey, let me know if you need any help on that project. Just because I wanted to get in on it. So I want you to think about that. Maybe jot it down. Now look at that through the lens of a well-formed request using those 6 elements, right? and rephrase your offering using that criteria. Committed speaker, committed listener, right? Future action and conditions of satisfaction, time frame, mood, and context. So take a minute and look at what your offer might be if you take into consideration these 6 elements of a well-formed offer. And I'm curious, what changed, if anything? Anybody have any change to their offer? We have Emily, the boundaries of the offer, specifically with how far my assistance extended. So Emily, I love that you took this there, right? A well-formed offer can also keep us safe from a time suck, right? If we can get specific about what it is we could help with or support in an area and for how long and what that might look like, we also create that boundary for ourselves. That now just throwing out the let me know if I can help. Oh, someone going to say something? I'll just quickly finish that thought. That let me know if I can help doesn't get me in trouble. So I love that lens. Great perspective. Yeah, Susan, that opportunity, right? That potential opportunity to get to participate, if it's something you really want to help out in, might increase if you can be more specific about what role you feel like you could play in that. Anybody have any change to their offer that you want to share? All right. With effective requests and effective offers also comes the answers that can be provided to that. And there are really only 4 valid responses that are acceptable. One is yes, right? This is when I make the request, the committed listener understands everything, knows what I'm asking for, is able to meet all of it, and says, yes, I'm on board, I can do it by the time you said, and all of the conditions of satisfaction, I get it. 2 is no. This, and we should probably be careful with this. It's not like we could probably all have the ability to go around saying no all the time. But this is when a no might be, I don't actually have the access to do what you're asking me to. So no, I can't. I would probably then provide something than just a no. But at the end of the day, this means the individual is not able to commit to this agreement, right? Or commitment. They cannot do that. So they say no. The third type of answer is commit to commit. This is one that I do probably more than the others, which is to say, I hear what you need. I need to go back and look at my schedule to determine if I can actually agree to that. Give me until 5 o'clock today to get back to you to let you know if I can do it. And I use this one probably more than others, right? I hear you. I understand you. I know what you're asking for. I'm just not 100% sure that I can say yes right this minute. Okay. And then counteroffer is, I hear you. I understand what you're asking, and I have something else for you to consider, right? That could be, I hear you. I understand you. I can't do it within that specified time frame. I have someone who can. Are you willing to engage in that conversation? It could be, I hear you, I understand you. I don't have access to that information, so I can't get it by that time, but I know who does have access to the information. It's just going to take us longer. A counteroffer means I hear everything and I understand it, but I can't agree to all of it, all the pieces. Those are the 4 valid responses. Responses that are not valid. Uh-huh. Maybe. Sure. We'll see. Sounds good. Those are not valid responses to requests or offers. Okay. And with those agreements, so we've said yes. Let's say we got to yes, right? There are 3 types of agreements once we get there. The first one is strong. That means you can count on me, right? You know that I'm going to come in, I'm going to get it done. We're solid. The second is shallow. And sometimes we don't know this. I say yes, but in my head, I'm going, sure, I'll do that. Yeah, that sounds good. Unless Susan doesn't follow through with her thing, and then that's never going to happen. But you maybe don't even hear that part. That's what we'd call a shallow agreement. And then this one always makes me laugh. Our criminal agreement is I say yes, but I have no intention whatsoever of actually following through. And that's just criminal. So we have 4 valid responses and we have 3 types of agreement. This is just showing you that there's a cycle of commitment. We take these and we separate them out really clearly for understanding. You make the request, you use the 6 elements. You get a response. There's only 4 types of responses. You make a strong commitment or agreement, right? You go off and you do what's asked of you, and I come back and assess whether or not you did it. But really what's happening in that is there is a shared space of trust, which means when I go off, if I've said yes to do whatever it is you ask, and I go off and realize, oh, I don't understand all of this, then I can come back and I can get clarity from you. That this isn't an open a door, throw it out, shut the door, and wait for you to come back with the answer, right? We've created a shared space of trust where we can engage in dialogue to get more clarity if needed, to come back and manage that commitment if needed. And speaking of managing commitments, we like to look at this as a lot of people talk about, oh, I'm so bad at time management. Well, we don't believe you can manage time. There's no such thing as time management. The time is fixed, right? There's 24 hours in a day. As much as we might want 25, it doesn't exist. So you cannot manage time. What you can do is manage your commitments. So you've got to be aware, well, what commitments am I making? What have I said yes to? Even if it wasn't a direct request and one in which I spoke yes out loud. And we want you to think about that. We're going to give you 2 minutes. Write down every commitment that you have on your plate. Just jot it down fast. What are all the commitments that you have on your plate? These are all the things you said yes to. This is every meeting that's on your calendar. This is every deliverable that you said you'd get done. This is telling your husband or wife that you were going to go pick up the groceries, which my husband did not do last night, by the way. He failed on his commitment. Right? These are all of those. I'm going to walk the dog, right? I'm going to go to the gym. It's a commitment I made to myself. Those need to be included. I said I'd write up a brief summary of a workshop, right? That's a commitment I made. I have an agenda that I need to create. I have a new coaching client I have to do something for. These are all the things I've said yes to. Give you about 30 more seconds to write down all your commitments. Now take a look at that list. Is there anything on there that you should be saying no to, or you should commit to commit or counteroffer? If so, circle it, take note of it, manage that commitment. The other thing I would say is if you are a leader, there are things on that list that you potentially could delegate. People don't like the word delegate because they feel like it means I'm giving other people the work I don't want to do. Rephrase. I'm empowering other people to fulfill this, right? At one point in time, I can remember doing reports and feeling like, ooh, I'm really learning how to do this. And I was young and didn't know how to put everything together or why it was organized in the way it was organized. And I remember my project manager at the time feeling guilt over the fact I had to do this report every month. It was a learning opportunity for me. And we forget that. We forget that it's learning opportunities for other people. And when you're looking at delegation, delegation is not always giving other people things. It's looking at my list and saying, what doesn't require me specifically to do this? It can be done by others. Even if I enjoy it, it can be done by others. Those are great items to delegate. Remember that we teach people how to treat us. We get what we tolerate. I want that to sink in. If we are saying yes to everything without any sort of conversation around what's really required, does it fit within what we're trying to accomplish? With none of that, then we're yes people, right? And we are saying it's okay to come to me with any request you ever have, because I'm going to say yes. And then we go off behind closed doors and get mad that more gets added to our plate. We teach people how to treat us. We get what we tolerate. So think before saying yes is not this blanket agreement now that you can just go out and say no to everything. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that. But it is thinking about what are you saying yes to and what are you committing to? Okay. And managing those commitments. That's what it's about. When you have these commitments that you have with other people and someone, or you've made the request, somebody agreed to it, what do you do when someone doesn't give you what they promised they would give you? You can ignore it. Just ignore it completely. You do nothing. You can gossip, complain to others about it. I do not suggest that. You could also blow up in a loud fit of anger in front of the entire team. Don't suggest doing that. I don't suggest doing any of those things. I suggest learning how to make responsible complaints. And there's a difference between a responsible complaint and complaining. A responsible complaint is one in which you set the context. You remind each other of the conversations we've had in the past and that we agreed we would make responsible complaints if things didn't turn out the way we anticipated they would turn out or expected them to. Then we start with the facts. This is when we're bringing in the other speech acts. What are the assertions, right? From there, we go forward and we move into, was a promise really made and it wasn't fulfilled or that commitment was not managed? Then we can share the assessments that come from that. And if indeed there was a promise made, we need to talk about, is this a new request that we need to go through? Is there a new commitment or time frame, or do we need to revoke that initial agreement completely? And then the key thing here, is this an event or is it a trend? Is this a one-time thing? Because if Susan does what she always says she's going to do when she says she's going to do it, and I have this moment where that didn't happen, that is one event. And let me tell you, my conversation with Susan's going to look very different. My conversation is going to be, hey, are you okay? What's going on? I'm concerned, right? Whereas if it's a trend, how do we keep this from happening? So responsible complaints versus complaining. We're going to throw in this slide. We're not going to walk through all of this, but if you want to build or sustain a culture of commitment, here are 10 things that you can do. Requesting feedback, making sure that we're creating a vocabulary that makes sense and that we can all use, making sure we're declaring goals that we can all get on board with on how to improve our culture of commitment. And so this will be included in the slides. Some key takeaways for today: declarations create a different space for us and others. Assessments are powerful. We need to ground them. We have 6 elements of an effective request that will help us with the desired results while supporting others and being successful. There's no such thing as time management, only commitment management, and we must manage our commitments well. And then exercising caution that you are making responsible complaints and not complaining. We're gonna, as we're moving through the next steps, feel free to throw into chat your one takeaway from today. Our next steps for this in October, we'll have a Noddlepod discussion. So we'll have some questions that we'll pose again. We really encourage you to engage with your colleagues in that conversation. November 15th, sorry, this should be session 6. I had a misnumber there, where we'll talk about moods and emotions, trust, and then next steps for you to consider as you move forward. Ongoing, continue to practice all of these new distinctions, reflect on what you're learning, and then I always say rinse and repeat. Keep it going. I think Susan is going to put in our survey, or already has put in our survey, and we just ask that you complete that. Your feedback is always appreciated. And with that, I think I'm right on the dot. Megan, if there's anything you want to say when we close out, feel free, but not required. It's always good to see you all, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think the survey wasn't active. People are clicking on it, so.
Okay, we will
I'll look
send,
into that.
yeah,
Okay.
we can send that link out. I think Megan will be able to send that out.
Wonderful. Thanks
Thank
again,
you for
Jennifer.
letting us know.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we can stop.